Good afternoon. It is the 7th of January, 2024 in the afternoon. I'm re-recording this intro because I had forgotten to put my AirPods in my ears again, so you couldn't really hear my voice. So I'm re-recording it. Just a quick intro. As you can see, the rain came back and I have a lake in my yard again, which is unfortunate, but I'll work around that as I always do. Luckily, I don't have too much left to do under the car, so it's not that big of a deal. I have a little bit, but not that much. So, um, my plan today is to finish connecting the transmission cooler lines to the new radiator. That shouldn't take long now that I have the right fittings and everything. Um, and then after that, we'll see what I'm going to do. I do have the distributor and the carburetor in the garage ready to be rebuilt, gone through and whatnot. But since the weather's pleasant enough right now, low 40s and whatnot, I'm trying to work outside too as much as I can. So, continuing on, I made a mistake by leaving this hood partly open last night in the rain, and I'll show you why in the next clip. So I elected not to close the hood all the way. It was latched, it was partially closed, but still quite a bit of water snuck in here under the hood. So that was really dumb of me. But part of the reason I did that is because I'm deathly afraid of that cable on the hood latch breaking. Some of you have probably heard the horror stories of that hood latch cable. Let's see if I can zoom in on it here. Right there in the center of the view there. Sometimes that comes loose or just breaks. And if the hood happens to be closed, when that happens and it doesn't release, then you got a heck of a problem trying to get that thing released, because then you got to figure out a way to get the car up high enough off the ground and sneak some kind of a stiff rod up in there and just kind of work your way up there and force it open that way. And I don't ever want to have to do that. The thing has always been kind of stiff when I'm pulling on the handle at the dash to unlock the hood or open the hood, and it makes me nervous. The latch itself is not sticking as far as I can tell, and as far as I can tell, it's lined up pretty good. It's just the cable is just kind of stiff in the wraparound steel cover that goes into the firewall and all that. So something I should have done when I had the dash completely out was to just completely remove that assembly and clean it up real good. So I'll have to figure out something to make that where it slides easier for my comfort. So that's where I'm starting today. Like I said, I'm just going to finish installing the cooling lines over there. Something else I noticed now that I'm getting close to putting the fan and the shroud on, the thermostatically controlled clutch here, fan clutch, I believe it's one of these that has silicone in it. I noticed when before I had my gloves on, I could feel the slickness. I think this thing is probably leaking. Now it's not failed. Well, I don't know. It actually feels pretty loose now that I play with this a little bit more. In fact, I wish this was something I had figured out before. That thing's no good. It shouldn't be spinning that easy. So I'm going to have to replace that fan clutch. So I'll compare that cost with replacing the fan clutch. I'm not going to put a solid spacer in there. That just makes too much noise, and I don't want to do that. I'll compare replacing that fan clutch with what it might cost to put electric fans on there instead. We had this recent conversation with some people online and about these aluminum radiators and how the fins might be made closer together than the original design, which makes it harder for this fan, the original fan, to pull the air through the radiator, especially at low speeds. So I'll have to look into that some more. Something else I wanted to mention too, I think it was Jeff Smith, I think that's his name. He's given me a lot of good feedback and comments online. Thank you very much. He had suggested this first, replacing the transmission modulator, because it looked like it might have been leaking. Brian, the person I bought the engine and transmission from in Kentucky, he called me on the phone yesterday and we had a nice conversation. Really appreciate his advice. He's really smart on this stuff. He suggested I replace it too. So I guess since two of you have already mentioned that, I went ahead and ordered another one from Napa Auto Parts. So I'll have it tomorrow. It was about $25, not too bad, and it's pretty easy to replace, so it just makes sense. This one happens to be adjustable as well. I think you use a small Allen wrench, if I remember correctly, from years ago, that goes inside the back of it if I need to adjust it. But I won't touch it when I first put it in, just to see how it does. And hopefully that's the source of that one leak at the back of the transmission that I saw when I was putting on that vacuum line. Brian also suggested very strongly that I use an oil that has a zinc additive to it. He explained how the original old style camshafts on these engines are in direct contact with the lifters and whatnot, which of course I'm well aware of that. I've rebuilt these before, but I wasn't aware of the some of this engineering stuff like using additives. I've never used additives, but I decided I went ahead and ordered an STP additive that has zinc in it. I'll add that to my oil. And in the future, and I saw someone else on YouTube had actually had a video about this recently about their late 60s Lincoln that had noisy valve tappets, and he changed the oil and put in diesel oil, or oil meant for a diesel engine. Same weight, I don't remember what he used, 10W40 maybe, but that oil already has zinc additives in it and other additives, and as soon as he did that change, that oil change, the tappet noise went completely away. The engine became completely silent, which was pretty impressive. So that definitely lends credence to the idea that I should be using an additive in my oil. So I'm going to add that too. He gave me some other advice too about how to rebuild the carburetor, and which I appreciate. And we talked about something else too, but I don't remember what it was right now. But anyway, I just wanted to say I really appreciate all you guys out there that give me feedback and comments and ask questions and make suggestions and all that. It helps me a lot, and it's good to know that people are, some of you anyway, are getting something out of my videos. I appreciate that too. So, all right, time to work. All right, I just completed attaching the transmission cooler lines. You can see them here with my new adapter fittings and all that. Everything bolted together nicely. I just happened to have had leftover high pressure transmission line, those rubber hoses there, from a 67 Lincoln convertible I used to own, had many years ago, and I still had some leftover new hose from that project car, so I just used them here, so that worked out nice. I'm a little concerned that these fittings may not be quite right for the radiator, even though they screw in tight and everything. I don't think the inverted flare matches up with the corresponding piece in the radiator. So I'm going to be very interested to see if there's any leakage right here. And if there is, I'll probably have to use some kind of a sealing washer there between that fitting and the radiator itself. I think that should work if it does happen to leak. I hope it doesn't, but just in case, I've got to have a plan B. So, as I already showed you, my fan clutch apparently is no good, so I'm going to, later on this evening after dark, I'll go in and do some research on that, see which way I want to go. So I'm obviously not going to be putting the fan on right now. I'm not going to pour any radiator coolant in here yet either until I'm finished with that back fitting. So, I don't know, I may just play with the brakes right now. I don't know yet. I had to use a little ramp here, a doggy ramp, to get up on my steps here. There's so much water down there, but do what you got to do, right? Just did a small little task I've been meaning to do for a long time, and that's to put a drain hose connecting the overflow tube from the expansion tank down below. There's actually a little hook there at the bottom of the timing cover that I had to spread out a little bit because this is a slightly bigger hose. Actually, I think what it is a fuel line, not a water hose, so it's constructed differently. But anyway, I made it work. It looks good. I also fed the speedometer cable back in through the firewall over there and hooked it back up to the cruise control. And it's not that pleasant outside, so I'm going to stop under the hood right now, let it dry out a little more. I think I'm going to go inside and start working on the distributor. So here is the distributor. It has the original Ford Motor Company stamp on it. It may be the original, it probably is the original distributor for the car. It's gotten kind of dirty, so I'm going to be taking it apart completely, cleaning it up real good, and some of the parts will not be put back on since I'm going to put the Pertronics in here. I also have a new cap and rotor coming as well. I noticed when I was looking a little closer here that this little ground wire in there is pretty frayed pretty badly. I don't know if I'm going to need that or not with the Pertronics. I think I might, so I'm going to have to do something about that. And then I'll take it apart enough to get to the weights underneath the plate there and clean everything up real good, make sure the springs are moving freely and all that for the centrifugal advance. And this vacuum advance is being replaced by a different design that doesn't require a steel fitting line to go in there for vacuum. It's just going to use a rubber hose. And of course this seal here, that one always leaks. I have a new one for that. So I'm going to start working on this just so I can document for my own use. I did put a mark here, a little black mark, so that I know where the rotor is supposed to point when I put it back in. get it lined up so the initial timing is close anyway, or at least it's back where it was when I pulled it out. So I don't want to lose track of that. So I'll give myself an idea of the orientation here too. It's a little more than 90 degrees pointing away from the way the vacuum advance is. So that's just my own use. Okay, I've torn the carburetor down. Not the carburetor, I wish. The distributor down is about as far as I want to go. Like you can see the centrifugal weights inside here. It's kind of dirty in there, but the good thing is they move freely. The springs are in place and hooked up. I thought about dipping this whole thing in my parts washer, but I don't think that's a good idea. There is a little rubber bumper right there in the middle of your screen that I don't know, there might be some other soft parts too, and I don't know how that would affect the rest of it. So I'm just going to just clean it, blow some air in there, and maybe spray some WD-40 or something in there just to give it a little lubrication. But it appears to be in good condition. It was hard getting all these little screws off that hold these plates in place and whatnot, as they're really tight, but I managed to get them loose, use my vise to hold it and all that. So some of the pieces I won't be reusing are in this little box here, and the rest of it I've got my little Ziploc bag to keep things together and not lose things, hopefully. So I'm going to do a little cleaning right now, and then I'll start to put things back together. All right, I've given the body here a quick cleaning on the outside and everything. The old seal there was hard as a rock, so I'm sure it was probably leaking, so that'll go there in that spot. Clean that up, and sprayed quite a bit of WD-40 in there and moved things around real good. Wiped it out with a clean rag as best I could, and discovered that there's a weeping hole on the bottom. So the fluid was actually leaking through, which wasn't a problem. I guess that's designed to let any water or whatever that might get in there to drain out. But anyway, so the weights are in good shape as far as I can tell. Everything moves freely. It's relatively clean, or as good as I'm going to get it anyway. So I'm going to start cleaning these little plates too a little bit, and then I'll start putting this plate here back on first. All right, the first plate is reinstalled. Just has two little Phillips head screws that hold it in place. I used my bench grinder here with a wire wheel attachment to clean that up real nice and pretty. And the nice thing about this too is distributor is very simple when you think about it. You really can't put it back together wrong. This only fits one way. So that part's done. Now I'm going to clean this plate up and reinstall it. Here's a great example of why I take pictures too, not just videos of when I'm disassembling things. I've got that plate nice and shiny too with my grinder, got it in place. Just sitting there, and again, that only fits one way. You can't really mess it up. What I'm glad I took pictures about was the order to put these things on. There's this little spring washer thing, and then the actual flat washer, and then this little C-clip. And I'm trying to be very careful not to lose that because those are hard to find replacements for. But I was going to put it in backwards, so I looked at my picture and realized this little spring thing goes first, then the flat washer, then that. So that's what I'm going to put on now. They go in that little shaft right there, so that's where I'm headed now. All right, I managed to get that little C-clip on there without losing it anywhere, so now you can see how this plate slides nice and easy. No problems, and it's not going anywhere. So I think at this point, it may be time to get the Pertronics kit out and see how that mounts in here. I don't think anything else that I took off is reusable, other than a couple of screws maybe. And I'm not sure about this wire. It wouldn't come out of the little hole there, which tells me it's either original or somebody replaced it and then crimped it later after it was through. I don't know if I need to keep that or not. That's why it's still hanging there. Anyway, I'm going to take out the Pertronics kit now and see what it tells me. All right, I lied. I decided to get this new seal on first to replace that old broken one. You notice that it is concave. It has to, that's not the right word, tapered. There we go, tapered. So you want the tapered part that's going to go down into the engine. You want that facing down, so it's going to sit like that on here. So I'm just going to slide that on and see what it looks like. And there she sits, the new sits. I don't know if I said that right, sorry, but anyway, there it sits in the groove, all nice and spread out, ready to make a good seal when I put it back in the car. There's my new Pertronics kit, including a new coil, which is really cool. Brian threw this stuff in with the engine and transmission when he sold it to me, which is really nice. And these things haven't changed in decades. I remember installing one of these again in my convertible Lincoln that I used to have years ago, probably 15 years ago easily, and it still looks exactly the same. Comes with a nice instruction sheet, so let's see what we got to do here to install this. This thing is amazingly simple to install. First instructions they tell you is to slide these through the hole inside the distributor and then seat it with the grommet here. And then you just mount those where the points normally go. They're very helpful. Only problem is the hole in this distributor is too small for these to slide through. Same reason I couldn't get the old wires out that I ended up cutting. So obviously I'm going to have to clip these off and put my own new terminals on there. They're very helpful though. They gave me one extra, but not two extra. But that's okay. I'm not complaining. I'm just going to cut those old ones off and then feed them through and continue on. Now the wires are fed through the side of the distributor, sealed with this little grommet. And then this mounts where the points used to go. There's a little tiny locator pin right there in the middle. Fits in that hole right there. So basically you just set it in place, get it in that little locator hole, and right there you just put the original screw that was in there holding the points on. I just read in the instructions that I do need to reuse this ground wire here, and you can see it's in bad shape. It's very frayed, so I'm not going to be able to reuse that one. So I'm just going to figure out some way to make a new ground wire that I can hook in there. All right, this is the final step in the installation of this. There's a little field gauge that's included in the kit. It's 30 thousandths inch thick, and you just have to set the gap right here. And the adjustment is very simple. You just basically move it until it's in there. Just a little bit of resistance, not much. And there's only one set screw, just one screw to tighten down, unlike the points, which have two screws, which is kind of cool. But that's what I love about these Pertronics kits. They're so simple, and you never have to set points again. You set the gap one time, and you are done. So I'm almost finished with this. As it turns out, this particular distributor doesn't have an adjustment to make, and it says in the instructions some distributors don't require this air gap setting. In fact, it doesn't move because if you recall, when I was putting this piece on, there was that little set pin, very small, that it sets into, and that keeps it from moving. And the gap is actually very close to 30 thousandths anyway. It's actually a little bit wider, I think. It's probably closer to 35 thousand, but since it's not adjustable, it should work just fine, just like it is. We'll know in another week or two. I'm being optimistic here. I can't finish assembling everything because I don't have my new vacuum advance just yet, but it's almost here. But for the most part, that's it. That's all it takes to set this up. And then, of course, I got to put the coil on the engine and hook the wires up and all that kind of stuff. But that's easy, and that'll come a little bit later. I could literally put this back in the engine right now, but I'm going to wait until I have my vacuum advance, my new cap and rotor, all that stuff, and then I'll put it back in. And that's going to wrap it up for today. I'm going to save the carburetor for my next rebuild. The distributor was easy, so carburetor is next, a little more involved. I don't know if I'll do that tomorrow or not. The weather's actually supposed to be pretty nice, so I don't know. Working in that water, that muddy water, is not pleasant, and I need to work on the brakes. And I don't know if I'm able to do that tomorrow or not. I may try, I may not. So we'll see what tomorrow brings. So anyway, that's it for today. Have a good evening.